Most men never remember signing it. There was no ceremony, no witness, no moment where someone explained the terms. And yet, from the moment you became aware of yourself in the world, you were bound by it. An invisible contract. It did not arrive as a document. It arrived as reactions, a look of approval when you behaved correctly, a pause when you did not, laughter that lingered too long, silence that felt heavier than punishment. Slowly, quietly, you learned what was expected, not through explanation, but through consequence. This is how most social rules are taught, not by force, but by pressure, not by instruction, but by repetition. As boys, many of us sensed it before we understood it. There were moments when an instinct surfaced. To speak honestly, to show fear, to refuse to step away. And just as quickly, that instinct was corrected. Sometimes gently, sometimes brutally. A joke from a teacher, a warning from a parent, a look from peers that said, "Don't do that again." No villains were required. The system worked on its own. Schools rewarded compliance more than curiosity. Media celebrated certain versions of masculinity while quietly shaming others. Families often trying their best passed down rules they themselves never questioned. Culture filled in the gaps. Over time, behavior that once felt natural began to feel risky, safer to suppress, easier to perform. You were not taught what to want. You were taught what not to want. Historically, this is not new. Every civilization has relied on unspoken rules to shape its men. Initiation rites tested obedience before belonging. Class systems trained men to know their place early. Honor codes, religious expectations, economic roles. Different eras, same mechanism. Conform or be cast out. What changed is not the rules, but their visibility. Modern society prefers them hidden. If a rule is never stated, it cannot be challenged. If pressure feels normal, it goes unquestioned. Men grow up believing their struggles are personal failures rather than predictable outcomes of a system they never chose. The cost of learning this late is steep. It appears as resentment without a target, relationships that feel hollow despite effort, burnout that rest cannot cure. A quiet sense of betrayal, not toward anyone specific, but toward life itself. Many men believe something is wrong with them. Unaware, they followed instructions never designed for their well-being. This documentary is not an accusation. It is an excavation. Before rejecting the rules, they must be seen. Because the most dangerous social rules are not enforced with threats. They are enforced with belonging. And once you notice the contract, once you see how early it was signed, the world shifts. Conversations carry subtext. Expectations surface. Silence becomes meaningful. You may not feel comfortable, but you will feel awake. And for many men, that is the first real act of choice they have ever made. Rule number 1 is rarely spoken, but it is enforced everywhere. Be agreeable or be rejected. Most men learn this early, not through lectures, but through atmosphere. You feel it the first time you challenge a teacher and the room turns cold. The first time you disagree with friends and the jokes land too precisely. The first time you say no and warmth is replaced by distance. Nothing dramatic happens. No punishment is announced. You are simply less included. So the correction begins. Agreeableness becomes strategy. Nod at the right moments. Laugh on cue. Swallow the thought that might slow things down. Harmony is praised. Friction is treated as a defect. Over time, many boys learn that being liked feels safer than being honest. Psychologically, this makes sense. Humans are wired for belonging. Exclusion triggers the same stress responses as physical danger. In childhood, standing apart feels existentially risky. So men adapt. They read the room. They self-edit. They learn which opinions are safe and which must stay unspoken. Schools reward this. Early workplaces reinforce it. The agreeable man is called easy to work with. Low maintenance. A team player, compliments with conditions. Do not disrupt the flow. Do not challenge authority directly. Do not make others uncomfortable with inconvenient truths. History shows how effective this rule is. Most systems do not depend on cruelty. They depend on compliance, on people who sense something is wrong but stay quiet. Because speaking up costs belonging. Silence becomes participation. Not because people agree, but because disagreement feels expensive. This is the trap. Agreeableness buys short-term peace. It smooths interactions and avoids conflict, but the cost accumulates. Each unspoken boundary weakens agency. Each swallowed objection teaches the nervous system that group comfort matters more than perception. Over time, something erodes. Men living by this rule struggle to say no without guilt. They over-explain boundaries. They miss discomfort until it becomes resentment. Externally, they seem calm and cooperative. Internally, they feel invisible, and invisibility breeds anger. Not the loud kind, the quiet kind that settles into relationships, careers, and self-image. The kind that says, I did everything right, and I still don't feel respected. The kind with no outlet because nothing obvious ever went wrong. Society claims to admire rebels, but it runs on conformists. Loud dissent can be managed. Silent agreement keeps systems intact. Meetings with no objections. Policies no one questions. Norms that persist because challenging them feels costly. The most dangerous part of this rule is not obedience. It is that obedience is disguised as kindness. And once a man confuses self-erasure with being good, he loses the ability to see when he is being erased at all. Rule number 2 sounds practical, almost undeniable. Your worth is your usefulness. Most men absorb this so early it feels like reality rather than conditioning. You are praised when you produce, respected when you endure, valued when you solve problems without complaint. Care, recognition, and belonging arrive conditionally. You matter when you are needed. This rule appears everywhere. In families, boys are encouraged to be strong rather than honest, helpful rather than vulnerable. In workplaces, men are rewarded for output, not self-awareness. Long hours become proof of character. Exhaustion turns into quiet virtue. Media reinforces the pattern. The ideal man is competent, tireless, reliable. His inner life is optional. Psychologically, this creates a loop that never fully rests. When approval is conditional, the nervous system stays on alert. Men begin monitoring themselves constantly. Am I doing enough? Am I still useful? Am I replaceable? Rest feels suspicious. Joy feels unearned unless it follows productivity. Even relationships can start to feel transactional, where care is exchanged for performance rather than presence. This wasn't always the structure. Before industrialization, male identity was more communal. A man was a craftsman, a protector, a participant in shared life. Value was relational. Industrial systems changed that. Men became units of labor. Time became measurable. Output became currency. Identity slowly fused with productivity. That fusion never fully reversed. Today, many men struggle not because they lack discipline, but because they have too much of it. They override exhaustion, ignore dissatisfaction until it hardens into numbness. When work slows, health fails, or relevance fades, identity collapses. Without usefulness, there is nothing left to stand on. This rule trains men to distrust their inner signals. Fatigue becomes weakness. Boredom becomes ingratitude. Emotional pain is postponed until it can no longer be ignored. The body speaks, but the instruction is clear. Keep going. Do not stop. Do not burden others with your limits. So many men live in a state of quiet, depletion, functional, respected, deeply disconnected from themselves. The most unsettling part is how normal this feels. When usefulness becomes identity, rest feels like failure. Asking for support feels like theft. Saying I am tired feels like inadequacy rather than truth. Life is measured by output instead of meaning. Eventually, a question surfaces, usually late. If I stop producing, will I still be worthy of care? If I am no longer useful, do I still matter? This rule doesn't need force to survive. It sustains itself through fear. Fear of invisibility. Fear of replacement. Fear that love and respect were never unconditional to begin with. And once a man sees how much of his life has been shaped by this belief, it becomes impossible not to ask what was traded away in order to keep it. Rule number 3 is taught quietly but enforced relentlessly. Vulnerability is a liability. Most men learn this before they have language for it. As children, emotional expression is tolerated only in narrow windows. Pain is acceptable if it passes quickly. Fear is allowed if it turns into bravery. Sadness is permitted until it becomes inconvenient. Anything that lingers is corrected. Toughen up, calm down. Don't make a scene. At first, vulnerability is merely discouraged. Later, it becomes risky. By adolescence, many boys already know which emotions are safe and which ones cost them respect. Anger is often allowed. Humor is rewarded. Detachment is admired. But uncertainty, grief, or tenderness are met with discomfort or ridicule. The lesson is subtle but consistent. Emotional openness makes you smaller in the eyes of others. This has psychological consequences. Suppressing emotion does not remove it. It relocates it. Research on emotional suppression links it to increased stress, reduced self-awareness, and difficulty forming secure relationships. Unprocessed feelings tend to surface indirectly, as irritability, as numbness, as sudden outbursts that feel disproportionate even to the person experiencing them. Culturally, men are placed in a double bind. They are told to be emotionally available partners, friends, and fathers, to communicate, to open up. Yet when they do, the response is often unease, a shift in dynamics, sometimes a loss of attraction or trust. Vulnerability is praised in theory and punished in practice. This contradiction teaches a lesson. Many men try opening up once or twice. When it feels unsafe, they retreat. Keep it contained. Handle it alone. Emotional armor forms not out of cruelty, but out of self-protection. Over time, that armor hardens. Avoided vulnerability is often misread as coldness. In reality, it is usually fear. Fear of being misunderstood. Fear of being judged. Fear of losing status in relationships that already feel fragile. Withdrawal and aggression become coping strategies. Not because men lack depth, but because they have learned depth is dangerous. This is not a moral failure. It is an adaptation. For many men, emotional restraint once served a purpose. It protected them in environments where openness was punished. But adaptations that protect early can constrain later. Armor that is never removed eventually restricts movement. It turns intimacy into a threat rather than a refuge. The tragedy is not that men feel deeply. It is that they learn to distrust those feelings. Vulnerability does not mean indiscriminate exposure. It does not mean confession without discernment. At its healthiest, it is selective. Knowing when openness is safe, knowing who has earned access, knowing how to speak truth without surrendering dignity. The danger is not feeling. It is believing that feeling itself is weakness. And when a man realizes that his armor was learned rather than inherent, something changes. Not recklessly, not all at once, but deliberately. The armor loosens, and something long held back finally has room to breathe. Rule number 4 is rarely questioned because it feels instinctive. Status is safety. Most men learn early to track where they stand. Not deliberately, but reflexively. Who speaks and who listens. Who sets the tone and who adapts. Who is deferred to and who is ignored. These calculations happen everywhere. In classrooms, workplaces, friendships, and relationships. Rank is read in posture, confidence, income, attention, and approval. From an evolutionary perspective, this sensitivity makes sense. In earlier environments, status often meant access to resources, protection, and influence. Falling too low in the hierarchy carried real consequences. The nervous system still remembers that. It reacts to social position as if survival were at stake. Modern systems exploit this instinct. They amplify status signals and tie them to symbols, titles, followers, possessions. Desirability. Men are encouraged to measure themselves constantly, not against internal values, but against one another. Success becomes visible. Failure becomes public. Comparison is no longer occasional. It is ambient. Hierarchies have always depended on this anxiety. Rigid class systems and honor cultures did not just separate people vertically. They redirected attention sideways. Men competed with those beside them instead of questioning the structure above them. Rivalry kept them occupied. Status hunger kept them compliant. The pattern continues. Today, many men feel pressure to perform success rather than live meaningfully. Cars, careers, relationships, lifestyles become proofs of worth. Falling behind feels dangerous, even when nothing material is at risk. This produces constant tension. There is always someone ahead, always someone doing better. Rest feels premature. contentment feels naive. Men chase upgrades believing they are chasing security. But the finish line keeps moving because the system depends on motion. The irony is that status rarely delivers safety. High status attracts scrutiny and competition. Low status breeds shame and invisibility. Neither offers peace. Yet the rule insists climbing is the only option. That opting out is failure. That questioning the game means you couldn't win it. Obsession with status usually masks something deeper. Fear of dismissal, fear of not mattering, fear of being unprotected in a conditional world. The pursuit becomes compulsive because the underlying fear is never addressed. True autonomy does not come from endless ascent. It comes from stepping outside the hierarchy long enough to ask whether it deserves your life. From recognizing that safety built on comparison is fragile by design. From choosing substance over symbols, even when the symbols are louder. The most radical act for a man ruled by status is not reaching the top. It is refusing to let rank decide his worth at all. Rule number 5 is often praised as character. Silence equals strength. Many men are taught that enduring hardship quietly is not just admirable, but superior. You push through. You don't complain. You don't burden others with your problems. Pain is handled privately without disrupting the environment. This lesson is reinforced early. Stories celebrate stoic heroes who suffer without speaking. Fathers and mentors model endurance as virtue. Boys learn that voicing discomfort risks being labeled weak, dramatic, or ungrateful. Silence becomes proof of toughness. Speech becomes suspect. Over time, silence stops being a choice and starts feeling mandatory. Psychologically, this can slide into something more dangerous. Research on learned helplessness shows that when distress is experienced, repeatedly without relief, people stop attempting change. Not because they are incapable, but because they've learned expression has no effect. Silence becomes automatic. The costs accumulate quietly. In relationships, unspoken needs turn into distance. Partners sense something is wrong, but have nothing concrete to respond to. In workplaces, men who never voice limits are rewarded with more responsibility until they are overwhelmed. In mental health, suppressed distress doesn't disappear. It settles into the body. Sleep problems, irritability, anxiety, sudden collapse. Many men are not recognized as struggling until they break. Historically, Stoicism meant something very different. Classical Stoic philosophy emphasized awareness, discernment, and intentional response. It was not about denial. It was about knowing what could be controlled and acting accordingly. Modern culture flattened this into emotional suppression. Restraint was confused with repression. The distinction matters. Restraint is chosen. Repression is enforced. One preserves agency. The other erodes it. When men believe strength requires silence, they lose access to support before they realize they need it. Asking for help feels like failure. Naming pain feels like weakness. Suffering becomes private, isolated, and prolonged, and silence rarely protects anyone. It doesn't make pain noble. It makes it invisible. And what remains invisible cannot be addressed. Men who suffer quietly are often praised right up until they can no longer continue. After that, the same silence that was admired becomes inconvenient. Real strength is not endless endurance. It is the ability to signal limits before they are crossed, to articulate needs without shame, to name pain while it is still manageable. Strength is not measured by how much you can carry alone, but by how clearly you can say when carrying alone is no longer sustainable. The most dangerous silence is not the absence of noise. It is the belief that your pain does not deserve a voice. Rule number 6 is framed as wisdom, but it carries a quiet cruelty. Respect must be earned through suffering. From an early age, many men absorb the idea that hardship is not just inevitable, but necessary. Struggle builds character. Pain legitimizes success. If something comes easily, it is suspect. If a path is healthy or humane, it must be incomplete. Suffering becomes a credential. Culture reinforces this relentlessly. Stories celebrate men who endured brutal conditions, survived relentless pressure, and emerged hardened. What is rarely examined is what those men lost along the way. The emotional cost is edited out. Trauma is reframed as toughness. Endurance is praised while damage is ignored. This belief is not accidental. Historically, suffering has been an efficient tool of control. Labor narratives glorified exhaustion as virtue. War mythology framed sacrifice as the highest form of manhood. Men were taught that pain proved loyalty, strength, and worth. Questioning the necessity of suffering was treated as weakness, entitlement, or betrayal. Over time, this logic moved inward. Many men begin imposing hardship on themselves. They choose unnecessarily difficult paths. They feel guilty when life becomes easier. Rest feels undeserved. Ease feels dishonest. Even when healthier options exist, they hesitate, fearing that choosing them will invalidate who they are. Psychologically, this distorts the relationship with well-being. Self-respect becomes confused with self-punishment. Burnout is dismissed as a test to pass. Harmful environments are tolerated because leaving would feel like failure. Struggle becomes familiar. Peace feels suspicious. The tragedy is that suffering does not automatically produce wisdom. It can just as easily produce bitterness, rigidity, and emotional narrowing. Pain without reflection does not refine character. It depletes it. Yet the rule persists, convincing men that without hardship they are unearned, illegitimate, or replaceable. This belief keeps men compliant. If respect requires suffering, exploitation can be framed as opportunity. If hardship proves worth, refusing it becomes shameful. Men police themselves, enduring long past the point where endurance serves any purpose. Eventually, a quiet question surfaces. What if suffering is not a prerequisite for dignity? What if worth does not need to be proven through pain? Choosing a healthier path does not erase effort. It honors it. Growth does not require destruction. And legitimacy is not measured by how much you have endured, but by how consciously you choose to live. The most radical idea for a man raised on this rule is simple. You do not have to suffer to deserve respect. Rule number 7 feels responsible, mature, civilized. Authority knows better than instinct. From early on, men are taught to defer, follow the rules, trust the system, listen to those in charge. In schools, success is measured not just by understanding, but by compliance. Questions are tolerated only within approved boundaries. Outside them, curiosity becomes disruption. Over time, this shapes behavior. Corporate culture rewards execution, not judgment. Bureaucracies prioritize procedure over perception. Responsibility is pushed upward. If something goes wrong, the individual followed protocol. The system itself remains unquestioned. Psychology has demonstrated how powerful this conditioning can be. In controlled experiments, ordinary people defer to authority even when their instincts signal discomfort. Perceived legitimacy overrides internal judgment. Obedience feels safer than dissent. The cost is subtle but cumulative. When men are trained to outsource judgment, they lose confidence in their own perceptions. Decisions feel dangerous without approval. Action is delayed until permission is granted. Instinct, ignored often enough, grows quiet. History is filled with examples. Large-scale failures rarely happen because everyone agrees. They happen because enough people defer. Men participate in systems they privately doubt, because authority carries weight and dissent carries consequence. Responsibility dissolves into structure. On a personal level, this produces paralysis. Men wait for credentials, for validation, for the green light. They remain in situations that feel wrong because someone above them has sanctioned it. Over time, self-trust erodes. The internal compass begins to spin. This does not mean instinct is infallible. Instinct can be shaped by fear, bias, and limited experience. Authority can offer expertise, structure, and coordination. The danger appears when one is treated as absolute and the other as disposable. Maturity is not blind obedience or reckless intuition. It is discernment, the ability to weigh internal signals against external guidance, to recognize when rules are outdated, when procedures protect systems rather than people, when compliance becomes complicity. Men raised under this rule often struggle to act without endorsement. They hesitate at crossroads, waiting for permission that never comes. Life becomes reactive rather than chosen. The most disempowering belief a man can hold is that wisdom exists only outside himself. Authority can inform, it can advise, it can coordinate, but it cannot replace lived perception. When instinct is fully silenced, responsibility disappears with it. The moment a man begins to trust his judgment again, carefully and critically he reclaims something fundamental, the right to choose without being told. Rule number 8 is delivered as a warning. Your anger is dangerous. From a young age, many men learn that anger makes them a problem. It is framed as volatile, threatening, morally suspect. Feel it, and you are unstable. Show it, and you are unsafe. The message is simple. Your anger must be contained, redirected, or erased. So it goes underground, but anger does not vanish. Psychologically, it is one of the body's clearest signals. It points to violated boundaries, unmet needs, or perceived injustice. When recognized and processed, it guides protection and change. When suppressed, it looks for another exit. Often it turns inward. Men taught to fear their anger frequently experience depression, numbness, or chronic self-criticism. The energy meant to defend the self is redirected against it. In other cases, anger leaks out unpredictably. Sudden outbursts, road rage, explosions that feel out of proportion and out of control. These are not signs of too much anger. They are signs of anger ignored for too long. Culturally, male anger is feared and not without reason. Unregulated rage has caused real harm, but the response has been blunt. Expression and violence are collapsed into the same category. Anger itself is treated as the danger. This is a mistake. Unacknowledged anger is more volatile than expressed anger. When men are denied healthy ways to name and communicate it, anger accumulates. It distorts. Clear boundaries become resentment. Assertiveness turns into withdrawal or aggression. This does not make men safer. It makes them less aware. The alternative is not suppression. It is literacy. Emotional literacy creates space between feeling and action. It allows a man to say, something here is not acceptable, without turning that recognition into harm. It transforms anger from a threat into information. Anger is not the opposite of control. Unexamined anger is. When men learn that anger itself is not the enemy, they regain access to a vital internal signal, one that knows when to protect, when to speak, and when to change course. The danger was never the feeling. It was the silence forced around it. Rule number 9 arrives quietly, usually after years of obedience. It's too late to change. By the time many men become aware of these rules, their lives are already structured around them. Careers chosen, relationships maintained, identities reinforced through repetition. Change feels destabilizing, not because it is impossible, but because so much has already been invested. Psychology reinforces this through sunk cost thinking. When time, effort, and sacrifice pile up, leaving a path feels like admitting failure. Regret becomes heavy. The mind searches for justifications to stay. Responsibility, realism, maturity, change is reframed as recklessness. Endurance becomes virtue. Social pressure compounds it. Men are praised for consistency, for loyalty to roles, for staying the course. Reinvention is often treated as crisis rather than growth. When a man questions his direction later in life, the response is rarely curiosity. It is concern, sometimes ridicule. The message is clear even when unstated. You should have figured this out already. This belief is deeply paralyzing, even when dissatisfaction is obvious, even when health or meaning is eroding. Starting over feels humiliating. Men stay in lives they have outgrown because leaving would require admitting that the earlier version of themselves was incomplete. But identity is not fixed. Quiet stories of late transformation exist everywhere. Men who changed careers, values, relationships, or ways of being well into adulthood. These stories are rarely amplified because they do not fit the myth of early certainty. They are not dramatic. They are not celebrated. They are simply real. Change feels threatening because it destabilizes narrative. The mind prefers coherence over accuracy. It would rather preserve a flawed story than revise it. But awareness arriving late does not make it invalid. It makes it urgent. Too late is rarely a fact. It is a story fear tells to protect familiarity. It warns of embarrassment, loss, and uncertainty. What it leaves out is the cost of staying. The slow erosion of self-respect, the resentment that settles in when truth is seen and ignored. Change does not require erasing the past. It requires integrating it, letting it inform what comes next instead of locking you into what came before. Growth is not betrayal. It is continuation. The real tragedy is not waking up late. It is believing that awareness obligates you to remain exactly where you are. Every rule explored here once served a purpose. They were not designed as traps. They were survival strategies, shaped by harsher environments and narrower definitions of safety. They helped men endure systems that demanded compliance, sacrifice, and restraint. In the right context, at the right time, they worked. The danger is not that these rules exist. The danger is that they persist long after the conditions that created them have changed. When left unquestioned, they stop being tools and become reflexes. They guide behavior automatically. Men mistake adaptation for identity. Choices feel personal, but they are often inherited responses to pressures that were never examined. Awareness interrupts this. To see a rule is to loosen its grip. Once a pattern becomes visible, it can no longer operate entirely in the dark. You may still choose it, but the choice becomes conscious, and that distinction matters. This is not a call for rebellion. Rebellion reacts. Responsibility reflects. Responsibility asks whether an inherited rule still fits the life you are living, whether it protects what matters now or only what mattered once, whether it serves integrity or simply keeps you predictable. Many men recognize these rules only after paying their cost, in strained relationships, in chronic exhaustion, in a quiet disconnection from themselves. The realization can be painful, but it is also clarifying, because what has been learned can be examined, and what can be examined can be revised. The changes that matter most are rarely dramatic. A pause before automatic agreement, a boundary named instead of swallowed, a feeling acknowledged rather than suppressed, a question asked where silence once lived. These are small shifts, but they restore agency. Perhaps the most consequential responsibility is what gets passed on. Rules are transmitted less through instruction than through example. What children observe becomes normal. What men tolerate becomes tradition. Every unexamined rule quietly reproduces itself. Breaking that cycle does not require perfection. It requires attention. The next time a familiar pressure appears, to be agreeable, to endure silently, to prove worth through suffering, pause. Notice where it came from. Notice what it asks of you. Notice whether it still deserves obedience. That moment of noticing is where change begins, not loudly, not all at once, but enough to make the invisible visible. And sometimes that is all it takes to step out of a contract you never meant to sign.